A woman did come to him, but in the darkness he decided she was an old crone. Hoping for a much younger woman, he sent her away, only to see in the firelight as she turned from him that in fact she was young and very beautiful. Coyote cried out for her to return, claiming it had been some spirit who had told her to leave, but she vanished into the night. The next camp was called War Clubs Flying Around. All that day, Coyote's knee hurt so much that he barely managed to arrive at the spot. Sure enough, that night clubs hurled at them from every direction. The warrior caught two, one for each of them, but Coyote dodged and weaved so much that a club finally beamed him. When he came to, Coyote told the warrior that in his boredom he had actually fallen asleep. That's why he had been lying so flat and still. Then the warrior told Coyote that their next camp would be at a place called Vaginas Flying Around. Coyote's knee at once felt entirely well, and he was ready to depart then and there. He pleaded for more details, but the warrior fell asleep. Coyote sat by the fire all night thinking of vaginas and how many he might be able to carry with him. His knee now stronger than ever before in his life, Coyote left early and ranged far ahead the next day. That night, as promised, vaginas began to sail into camp, and Coyote could tell they were just the kind he liked, very young and very plump. For most of the night, juicy vaginas sailed by, maddeningly out of reach, with Coyote flailing and chasing and panting until he was near collapse. Finally, near dawn, Coyote caught one. But exhausted as he was, when he finally pinned and mounted it, his organ refused to rise to the occasion. The next night they would reach their final camp, and the warrior told Coyote this one was called Where the Enemy Attacks. Without delay, Coyote's knee began to throb, and all day he hung back on the trail, crying piteously. And sure enough, when the next morning came, enemies attacked from all sides. Coyote at once ran for far horizons, but was overtaken, clubbed, and scalped. Meanwhile, the warrior subdued all his enemies, then looked for Coyote. When he knew all was clear, Coyote stood and announced that he was going along now, but the warrior should consider himself lucky that he had happened upon Coyote. Otherwise, he would have had to engage in this adventure with no help at all from a famous warrior. Stories about Coyote, or sometimes Old Man Coyote, and rarely about Old Woman Coyote, although they are present in the canon, are the oldest preserved human stories from North America. The truth is that Coyote, capitalized to distinguish the deity from the ordinary coyote trotting by while you read, is the most ancient god figure of which we have record on this continent. When Siberian hunters first started crossing Beringia, or boating down the coastline 15,000 years or more ago, at some point in their entry of northwestern America they began to encounter coyotes for the first time. Wolves they knew from Asia, and well enough that at some point in their migration, these first Americans arrived with domesticated ones, wolf-like dogs whose wild ancestors in those times were recent. But at least by the time of the Clovis people who spread across the grasslands of interior America from Canada to Texas more than 13,000 years ago, continental coyotes were familiar creatures, and something about them resonated. Religious explanations for the world and how it works are at least 40,000 to 50,000 years old, so these former Siberians no doubt arrived with intact religions, mythologies, and deities. But as these first Americans settled the part of the continent that would stretch from today's California all the way to the Mississippi River, from the Pacific Northwest to the future New Mexico and Arizona, Coyote emerged as the deity of the ancient continent. No one knows when this happened or exactly how Coyote became a principal figure in so many different people's creation stories and ruminations on the human condition. We know only, based on the oral coyote stories collected among American Indians and set down by 19th and 20th century ethnographers, that over the centuries the various tribes fashioned many hundreds of coyote tales. No other native deity in America came anywhere close to inspiring such a vast body of oral literature. The story, Coyote and His Knee, is from the Wichitas of the Southern Plains, but I distilled the opening paragraphs of this chapter from groups as geographically separated as the Navajos, Southwest.